Hi there, I'm Ishta Mercurio. I'm a children's author who grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and now lives in Brampton, Ontario. And this is my YouTube channel, and I'm here to talk about I Read Canadian Day. I Read Canadian Day is important to me, especially because when I first came to Canada and walked into a bookstore, I noticed that most of the books in the bookstore were not actually Canadian books. They were American books. And that's important to me for several reasons. It's important to notice. And I notice because as an American who's lived outside America for most of my adult life, I spend a lot of time thinking about our culture, what our culture means, how it's defined, how we convey our culture to others, what we absorb from our environment. I spend a lot of time thinking about how our culture is made up of what we put into our environment, but it's also shaped by what we put into our environment. And so the books and the movies and the television and all of these things that we produce as producers of content are both reflective of and shaped by who we are. And they also determine the future of who we are as a nation, who we are as a culture. I also think it's really unfortunate that a lot of Canadians who are making children's books especially are in many ways struggling to survive, struggling to make a living as children's book creators, in part because so much of the children's book content that Canadians consume comes from outside Canada. And that's a little bit messed up. So I want to take a moment to highlight some Canadian created books for kids. First up, let's start with board books. This book, Pride Colors by Robin Stevenson, is perfect for toddlers. It's accepting, it's loving, it talks about the colors of the pride flag in a really wonderful way, and it also portrays non-traditional families in a way that is really casual and wonderful and normalizing. And I think that it's just fabulous, that it just gives kids these images of families with maybe two moms or maybe two dads and just says, you know, this is normal because it is normal. It approaches life and it approaches an introduction to the pride flag and what it means in a really lovely way. So this is a must-have. Another book that I really love is Will Ladybug Hug by Hilary Lum. This is part of a series. The series starts with Will Bear Share and continues with Will Sheep Sleep. And I love what this book does to introduce the idea of consent. Listen to this. Ladybug loves hugs. She hugs to say hello. She hugs to say goodbye. But will her friends let Ladybug hug? And I love that it poses this question as something that her friends will let her do. I think that it's really important to introduce to children the idea that a hug isn't something that you decide to give. A hug is something that you have to get consent from the person you're giving the hug to for. And it's crucial that we introduce this as early as possible in children's lives. So Will Ladybug Hug is a must-have. Next, I want to talk about Sidewalk Flowers, which is a wordless picture book written by John Arno Lawson and illustrated by Sydney Smith. The work in this book is just gorgeous, and if you haven't seen it yet or picked it up yet, you should get your hands on it right away. Look at that. Just breathtaking. It's a beautiful book. I also want to talk about Angus All Aglow, written by Heather Smith, illustrated by Alice Carter. And what I love about this book is that it is about a boy who loves to wear something because it has special meaning for him, but it's not something that is normally coded as being okay for boys to wear, which is nonsense. And I like the way this book approaches that. I like that it becomes a book about friendship as much as it's a book about finding a way to be who you are and love who you are. And I think it's a book that every kindergartner should have in their life. Another book that is just beautiful and that is full of mystery and fantasy is The Antlered Ship. This is what I call a hybrid book, like all my books, actually, because I'm an American living in Canada. This is written by Dashka Slater, who is not Canadian, but it's illustrated by the Fan brothers, who were both American and Canadian, like me. So, and it's illustrated gorgeously. Look at that. Look at that. I featured this cover on my cover collections blog because I love it so much. So if you want to know what I love about the cover, you should check my blog out. I will put a link to that in the description. But just look at this art. Look at that. It's incredible. The Fan brothers are amazing. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my own book, which is, I guess, another hybrid book, since I'm an American living in Canada and I wrote it. It was illustrated by Jen Karachi, who lives in Rhode Island, and I love the work she did illustratively in this book. It's about a little girl named Nanda who loves math and loves science and loves to explore the world, and as she grows, the world grows with her, until she grows so much and goes so far that she sees how small the world really is. And I think you can probably guess from the cover how far she goes. So I'm going to leave that as a surprise for you to discover. But that's another book you can check out. And the other one of my books, if you're into nonfiction, is Bite into Bloodsuckers. And this one's actually geared a little more towards the older crowd. It's picture book size, but it's not picture book style. So this is a good one for like grades 3 and up, I would say. We had a great time writing it, Carrie Lynn Winters and I. We put in all the bloodsuckers we could find, including a sea snail and some birds that drink the blood of larger birds. It's really fun. And there are even fleas that lived with the dinosaurs and were the size of your big toe. So this is a good one to check out for the kids in your life who love science and nonfiction and facts. I want to move a little higher up the reading age food chain and talk to you about Zetta Elliott's Dragons in a Bag. This book is super fun. It's got just enough fantasy and fun, and my son really enjoyed it. So I think that your kids will probably really enjoy it too. And then moving even higher up in the reading age food chain, I want to talk about Ben Philippe's A Field Guide to the North American Teenager. This book is fabulous. It's been receiving rave reviews, and it's a good read for the teenager in your life. Also good for the teenager in your life who likes graphic novels, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. This is written by Mariko Tamaki. I believe it's another hybrid book because the illustrator is Rosemary Valero O'Connell. I'm not sure that she's Canadian, but she might be. I could be wrong. It's published by Groundwood, so Canadian publisher. So maybe they're both Canadian. Mariko Tamaki definitely is. And this book is, again, really wonderful. Graphic novels I love because you can read through them fairly quickly, or because you can take in so much visually so quickly, or if you want to savor it, you can also savor it. And I like that about graphic novels very much. Again, older in the reading food chain, Tilly and the Crazy Eights by Monique Graysmith. This book is super fun. It's a kind of like crossover, appeals to teens, appeals to adults kind of thing, about Tilly, who has agreed to drive a group of older ladies in her life on a road trip. And it's about how they interact with one another, how the bonds between them strengthen, and it's wonderful. You should definitely check it out. And then finally, if you're curious about what I will be reading today, I will be digging into Kristen Worley's Woman Enough. I can't wait to read about her journey. I met her when she spoke at a launch event for this book last year, and I've been wanting to dig into this for a really long time, and it's finally made its way to the top of my TBR pile. So this is what I will be reading on this I Read Canadian Day. Happy reading.